when we ask questions regarding the lack of, yeah, listen, here's my plan. I'm going to just tell you right up. This is my plan going in. It's also Doug, right? We only have 30, 40 minutes and Doug is also there. So I'm going to get possibly 2 questions. Let's be real. So here's what I'm thinking. We're going to open. This is what they want to talk about the most. Trump tariffs are bad. I agree. I don't know if you've seen my content. I agree. So we'll just agree that Trump tariffs have been really bad. It's bad for California. It's bad for the country. We'll talk about that. Then I'm going to ask, I think a lot of people agree that Trump tariffs are bad. And he is polling, pretty substantially poorly in his first 100 days. However, the Democratic Party is polling even worse. I want to hear your opinion, Gavin, on why you think that is. Americans, even as they get more and more upset with Trump's policies, are not necessarily turning back to the Democratic Party. And then once I hear his answer on that, I want to do specifics. This might be Doug, might not be me, but we're going to ask about trains and housing in a direct, policy focused way. How are we going to get affordable housing? How do we get past NIMBYs? And then I'm going to ask him, do it be shitting? Yeah, that's the next one, Jace. Thanks. Good question. Appreciate that. And then I'm going to ask him if you think 100 men could beat a gorilla. Hey, Governor. Glad to meet you. Fuck. Fuck, that won't work. Moo, Governor. Okay, that's not going to work. That's going to be stupid. Dude, Doug's not here. This is crazy. How the is Doug not here? I'm losing it, dude. We're almost 5 minutes late. What a Giga Chad move, I guess, but my God. Hey, Aiden, I'm live. Do you have Doug's number?
You know what's crazy is I think I might have Doug's social security number, but not his phone number.
That's what I have too. If you can find any way of getting a hold of Doug, it's actually super urgent. Oh, there's Doug. Oh, thank God. Okay, Doug's here. Governor, pleasure to meet you.
Guys.
Yeah,
it's great to talk with you, Governor. Apologize for being slightly late. My internet decided to go out the literal minute we were starting, so that was a fun surprise to deal with. Have we gotten to tariffs and stuff yet? If you want to chat about some of what we were interested in, Atrioc.
Yeah, I did want to bring up, you mentioned the damage of tariffs, and the first question I had was around, I think you're going to have more knowledge, directly on policy and who you're talking to. Where do you think this is coming from? Is this Peter Navarro? Is this Scott Bessent? Is this Howard Lutnick? Is this Trump? Who is making the actual strategy of this, and why does it seem to change so chaotically?
It's all of the above, and I'd add Steve Bannon into that mix as well. These guys are ideological on this issue, and for Trump, it goes back to the 1980s and 90s. He was putting full-page ads out talking about how we're quote-unquote getting ripped off from Japan. So it's interestingly one of the few things that Trump has been consistent about throughout his career, but he just doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He quite literally, the chaotic nature of these tariffs, by definition, preclude it from being successful. If the whole idea is to get people to onshore, bring supply chain back, they have to be consistent, not chaotic. And we also have to address the fact that you have to be rational. 145%, down to 80%, now down to 30%. In just about, he's negotiating against himself as it relates to China. There's a recklessness in his approach. And so there's no strategy, there's no industrial policy backed up with a targeted tariff policy. I'm not opposed, and I think most folks are not opposed to targeted tariffs.
Okay, just to jump on that. So I agree with you. I fully agree with you. I feel like our allies are no longer willing to make fair deals with us. All the deals he promised to get are not coming through. Japan's not coming through. India's not coming through. Nothing seems to be happening. I agree with you. And I think, despite what you said about the misinformation of news and podcasts, I think this is filtering through to a lot of people. People are generally feeling the chaos. Polling is down on the tariffs, on the economy. He was favored on the economy before the election. Now it's down. However, I think it's worth bringing up that this is not translated to a polling boost for the Democrats. People are not seeing them as the good alternative to this chaos. They're just getting more and more disenfranchised and more angry. So I really want you to hone in on why you think that is and what you think the direction needs to change to get people to trust you and by extension the large Democratic Party about these issues, because the latest polls I've seen show that if Trump is polling worse, so is the Democrats. They're both doing badly.
Yeah, no, we've been historically low. We're at the weakest point in my lifetime, our lifetime, as it relates to the brand Democrat. And people don't think we're quote unquote on their side. They see us as weak. And so we got a lot of work to do and a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, I think, humility and grace as it relates to the party. And so I think that's most important. I think we have to own up to that fact. It is important to be strong. It's important to push back against Trump. I mean, look, I'm coming from the most un-Trump state in the country. You guys live here. We're already involved in 22 lawsuits. We're suing on his trade policy. We're the first state in the country to do that. So we're trying to assert ourselves from a position of moral authority and formal authority, but you need a positive alternative vision. And you need a positive alternative vision where people see themselves. Democrats need to get out of their own way. The world we invented is competing against us. We need to start building more housing. We need to be big in big things. We need to deliver on our promises.
So I'd love to ask you more about the housing policy specifically in regards to that. So Atriarch and I both read Abundance. I also watched the interview that you did with Ezra. I'm a big fan of Abundance and feel very similarly of a lot of chaos going on the right, but I would love to see so much more happening within the Democratic Party, and that book really resonated with me. Something that Ezra mentioned when you talked with him was, he returned to San Francisco after 10, 12 years, and it didn't feel like much had changed or was slightly worse. And so I would love to hear about how you're thinking about tackling specific building. I know that you, for example, pushed higher quotas across the state to get cities to actually build, and there's the lawsuit with Huntington and all that. So I know you've done a lot of work. My impression, and maybe please elucidate me if I'm wrong, is that there's still so much resistance to building. And when affordability is such a key issue with people voting, I'm curious how you think, we actually get tractable progress on this over the next, let's say, 4 years.
It's Econ 101. It's supply demand. It's not even complicated. And we're dumb as we want to be. For things to change, we need to change. And by the way, that's across the spectrum. And when it comes to housing policy, we have to be more muscular. And look, I've said this before, localism is determinative. The state's vision is realized at the local level on housing and homelessness. So now it's about accountability. And you referenced, and it's not a knock on Huntington Beach, one of the most beautiful cities in the country.
Yes.
But yeah, we sued them because they're not zoning for housing. We put 46 other cities on notice. I created a housing accountability unit that actually is getting cities and counties into compliance. So we mean business, and we're going to try to muscle our way in to make real this abundance mindset. We cannot afford to continue the status quo. And it's literally, I cannot impress upon folks, those of you that don't live in California, this explains more things in more ways on more days in terms of the challenges the state faces, cost of living. It's fundamentally on the issue of housing, and it has a direct relationship to what's happening on the streets and sidewalks of homelessness.
I totally agree, and I really am hopeful that this makes a big difference. One of the things that when you were talking with Ezra, you guys were talking about high-speed rail. Probably we don't have enough time to get into that, although I love talking about high-speed rail. And you mentioned with regards to how slow it's been, but that it's starting to speed up, right? Like the land rights are now acquired, things like this. For folks outside of California, in the process of building a very long train. And on the subject of how long it took, you said we can lament about it, but we've absolutely learned from it. And so I'm curious for you, like the learnings from that project or housing in California, what specifically is going to be changing going forward for whether you, and even just more broadly across the country for Democrats, what do you think are the lessons of the past 5, 10, 20 years that can be, concretely applied going forward to make a real difference?
I talked about liberalism that builds. Something else I talked about is liberalism that litigates.
Yes.
And that litigation is what's drawing this thing out. We litigate on everything. And of course, so much of the challenge for California on a project, and remember, we're talking about a fully functioning high-speed rail system that doesn't exist in the United States of America. I've taken the baton from 2 different governors on this, and that's why I can't make up for the past, but I can learn from them, but I have to be accountable to the present. And we're now on the other side. We're finally, later this year, laying track. We're on the other side of the environmental review, 98, almost 99% of all of it environmentally cleared. And I'm being specific here. 2,270 parcels have been procured now and are under our possession. So this thing is a go. And I compare that, and I think it's important, the high-speed rail that doesn't exist in Texas. They started theirs 1 year after ours. It's 4x over budget. They didn't lay 1 inch of track because they couldn't do anything that I just said California did, despite the regulatory environment that's very different there. My point is not to excuse California, but to make a point. You got to be big. If you want to be big in big things, you got to do big things, and you got to do them differently. And the issues around CEQA, which those of you who don't know, is something else Ronald Reagan helped build, ironically, is on the environmental side, and the rulemaking and process is easily abused. And so we have to have judicial review, and we've changed the rules on that to 270 days for large scale projects. It's one of the specific responses to your question. I can give you others, but I'm telling you, we cannot afford to make the mistakes we've made in the past on these large scale projects, and we're finally figuring that out.
Can I ask a broader question? I mean, we've traveled, we've been to Tokyo or Europe, and they build trains there relatively easily with less wealth than we have. And if we can't build it in Texas or California, I just want to know a better idea, maybe from my audience, in a broad way of saying it. Why is it so hard? What is the specific challenge that it makes it so much more difficult here than in other countries where they have, again, less money?
I mean, fundamentally, it's the rules we've created, and the rules were well established and well considered. The rules were around a sustainable mindset to make sure that we were transparent in terms of protecting our environment. And they came out of the Clean Air Act in 1970. They came out of efforts to reduce pollution, air pollution. They came out of a very enlightened process, but they started to get abused, and they became their own clay layer, bureaucratic inertia and litigation and eminent domain proceedings and process that literally paralyzed us. And so, as I say, the world we invented, in many respects, enlightenedly invented, is now competing against us. If we're going to be able to change the way we produce and consume energy as progressives and as environmentalists, we have got to get out of our own way so we can scale up that agenda in terms of these sustainable technologies, battery storage, not just wind and solar, and dominate that future and compete globally. So this is an imperative for Democrats and progressives to begin to own up of some of these regulatory thickets that we in the past have championed, but no longer are relevant to the world we're living in.
I did want to kick off the Q&A section though with you guys, Chuck and Doug. Just, you've got so many folks streaming right now. Just curious, like what kind of questions you're hearing from them that the governor might be able to answer.
I'd be happy to pull some from chat. They might not be the smartest questions in the world. I can pull a theme here that I see over and over in my stream content. And this is a lot of younger people, right? And the thing they are most worried about, not just in California, most of them aren't in California, it's housing prices. I feel like that's the most radicalizing thing for all young people, is they feel like they don't have a real ladder to the normal American experience. They can't see any possible future for it. And it's leading to all sorts of financial nihilism and crypto scams and everything they got to do to try and find a way onto the ladder. None of this stuff Trump is doing is helping, but this stuff was a problem in the 2020s. It was a problem before that. And so I guess I want to hear your thought on that and what they should expect from a different leadership.
Everybody's talking about what Kamala Harris should or should not have done. Could she separate herself a little bit from Joe Biden, and was that a tactical mistake, The View, et cetera. But one of the things she did do is she talked a lot more about this issue than the Biden administration candidly had been on the issue of housing. It was one of the things she came out when she started to frame her own economic vision. And it was so interesting, to your point, and to, I think, the theme of people that are watching. It's so resonant because it impacts all of us as renters and those that aspire to be owners in the future. And we have a generation right now, there's so many people writing about this, Richard Reeves and Scott Galloway. The issue of housing is something we can control. I passed, and I don't even want to get into defending my record because it's not good enough, 42 housing CEQA reform bills. I'm proud of the work we've done to put more attention to this. But reason I just said, I'm literally connecting my budget this year in California, which is the largest budget in this country, to dramatically more significant housing reform to build more housing, is because I deeply appreciate the anxiety that your viewers and those that are chiming in feel. And we have to address this issue, particularly in blue states. We have failed on the issue of affordability. We own this, and we need to own the response.
Can I ask one follow-up really quickly? Just on that, it'll be really quick. This is my worry. This is my worry on America in general, is that, okay, if you do these things and they work, let's say we do get high-speed rail you can actually get in. Let's say we get housing that actually is coming down in price. Will people recognize that, give credit, and give a vote? Is our media environment so cooked that people will not? Listen, you have to do it first. I'm not giving you credit for it till it's done, right? But if it happens, will people? Okay.
I'll just give you I'll just remind you what I said. 52 damn million jobs have been created since '89.
Yeah.
2 under Republican. The last 3 Republican presidents have one thing in common: recessions. Joe Biden, 16.6 million jobs. Blew past the COVID. So don't give me the COVID number bullshit. He blew past it in 18 goddamn months. Excuse my language, folks. Literally 8 times more jobs. 8 times more jobs in the last 3 Republican administrations combined in just 4 years, and he got no credit for it. So what you just said is spot on. I'm leaning in, and I totally get the frustration with that. And so you're right. That's our job. We've got to start communicating more effectively. Thank you, Lemonade. I love what you guys are doing. I love that you're talking about entrepreneurialism. I want the Democratic Party to own this space. I want to see this patriotism, service, a community. That's the spirit that finds the best of this country in our party. But we've got to be more aggressive on communicating our successes, owning up to our failures. Peril, this son of a bitch, Donald Trump, is going to shapeshift and convince young folks that he actually has their back, or even working folks back, which is anything but. He just did the biggest tax increase on everybody watching in American history with these damn regressive tariffs. Give me a break.
Last question for you, and then we'll do a round of plugs. Question for the governor. Are there any plans for nuclear energy in the future of California and the nation? And also, we've heard this a couple times, what's your favorite type of coffee?
Wait,
by the way, I am, if you give me some fancy coffee, keep it. I can't take it. If it's some slow drip nonsense,
should I move,
I can't take it. Give me a 7-Eleven coffee any day of the week. I'm at Chevron. Even though I got an electric car, I admit that. Don't call me an elitist. But if I, last time I was at Chevron, I'm like, love that coffee. Love that coffee in the little quickie mart. That's my kind of coffee. That's number one. What was the nuclear, more substantive issue. So,
a lot of them.
Hey, guys, folks kind of went nuclear on me. Full disclosure, I kept open just a couple of years ago the last remaining nuclear plant, Diablo in California. I did it because it's 100% green. I did it because it helps us with the duck curve that allows our battery storage. By the way, 15,700 megawatts, just announced that today, which is unbelievable. More installed battery than any jurisdiction in the world outside of China. Don't tell me that we can't transition to low carbon green growth. We ran the 4th largest economy in the world with 239 days last year with at peak during the day, 100% renewable green energy. But that included 9% base load on the nuclear. And so it is an important part of our transition. And I think Democrats, I think we need, particularly young folks, I don't think we should be as quick to be judgmental against nuclear if we're going to get to where we need to go in terms of our climate goals. And I know that's not universally accepted or popular, but that's my humble opinion.
You got 2 supporters here.
Yeah,
we're both
amen,
big
brother.
fans. We're
glad you said it.
We're trying. Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's safe, obviously. No one's being reckless here. My God.
Thank you so much. And we're going to have links to stay in touch with everybody, places to support folks at winthefightlive.com. You can join our Substack, connect with us. We'll get you connected with all these great participants. Thank you again. We really appreciate your time, and we hope to do this again with you sometime soon.
Appreciate the opportunity. That was a blast. Thank you
so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for all you're doing.
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Okay. All right. Not bad. For 30 minutes. I felt pretty good about that. His ass is not coming on the podcast. Really unfortunate about the tech issues. I feel like he was spitting at some points. I mean, listen, whenever a politician is talking, you can always go, oh, who gives a shit? It's a politician. And you're right? You can always do that and ignore it. But I think if it's a call, he has to talk. And if he's talking, he was making a good point. He was fine. I felt good about what he was saying in general. So I'm glad he did it. It was good. I appreciate it. I'm going to call Doug, see what he thought.
Atrioc.
Nice of you to show up on time, bro.
Dude, I swear to God, it was literally 3:59. Internet goes completely out.
I was like, what the is going on? I had Aiden call you. I was like, we're all in the call. Jordan's like, all right, we're about to go live. We got Atrioc and Doug. I'm like, Doug's not here. And then you joined and you weren't talking. And I was
yeah, well, I didn't know. Dude, I joined to the governor of California.
I know.
I didn't want to be
he was in the middle of talking.
Sorry, G-Dog. My internet was out. I didn't even know if I was on screen. Dude, my whole setup got completely... The internet was down. My phone wouldn't connect. My friend's phone wouldn't connect.
So
on his
funny.
Setup. Jesus Christ,
it was like you were Giga Shy because you joined the pre-show call but didn't talk. And they were like, hey, Doug, can we get a mic check from you? Any words? And you just were dead silent. Like, anything, Doug. Anything from you. And you were just...
God,
like, okay.
I want to make Newsom work for it, I don't want to just give it to
no, I like that. You're making a challenge, dude. The way the graphic looks like a debate.
Is it? Okay, so I couldn't.
Can you see my screen?
I had no idea what was going on.
It looks like you and me versus Gavin. the reason I look at this graphic is because we have something to talk about. We have something kind of urgent to talk about. This is Aiden's tweet. Deadass finding out about this right now. We forgot to tell him. I thought we told him. I totally thought we told him about the StarCraft thing on Sunday, but we
okay,
didn't.
Aiden called me.
Okay,
because he called me, but during this, I was running around, so I ignored it.
Yeah.
I'm going to read out the text. This is the first text I've ever received from Aiden.
This is so
Yo,
funny.
this is Aiden. A-Truck gave me a call and said he needed to get a hold of you urgently on Discord, but he didn't have your number. He said it wasn't a joke. Haha, IDK, what's up? But can you check with him if you can? Follow-up text 1 minute later. He's interviewing Gavin Newsom? The ramp up to this is particularly confusing for him.
Dude, what a... I called Aiden because you weren't joining.
But you didn't tell him why. You're just like, need Doug right now.
Well, I was live and I didn't want to. Yeah, I just was like, hey, Aiden, I don't have Doug's number. Please get him here. He's like he's late to the. And like he didn't know about Gavin Newsom. That's so funny, bro. This is gonna be a great bit on the pod tomorrow.
Tomorrow is forever.
Oh, do you want to get
forever.
Aiden in the call?
You do realize that we can win. Yeah, you should call him. You do realize we can win every political conversation from now on, right?
We interviewed the governor, and what did he do?
When Gavin, man, we're kind of on a first name basis. He's aware of the pod. Maybe.
Dude, I plugged it like 4 times.
Hey,
Aiden!
Hey, guys.
Aiden, we were just talking with our other friend Gavin. I want to know, he had to go.
Your other friend Gavin.
Yeah, we're talking to
We just felt
Gavster.
like, it's kind of awkward if you get 4 people. We were thinking we'd limit it to just 3.
No, it makes sense. It's like your friend, and you guys know him so
like
well.
we know him, and it's like you don't know him, so it's kind of like it would be weird to.
I was actually really busy. So if you go to check out Billy right now, you'll see my interview with a politician.
Oh, Xi Jinping.
I was actually working on that today.
You're
so.
talking to Xi.
So we're just split on different projects.
That's good. No, that's good. We split up, divide and conquer, as they say. As Gavin would say, what he's talking about. Policy. You wouldn't know that because
I'm so it's so funny. I want to dig into this so bad, but I want to save it for the podcast. So bad.
All right. Yeah, we should go deep on this tomorrow because we need to get to the bottom of what happened.
Someone said Lemonade Stand was supposed to be your safe space. I feel like, unlike the Yard, which just talks shit about you every day, this is more of like a slow burn to get you really safe, and then we abandon you for a hotter, more governistic man.
Yeah, what is happening? I'm like Theon Greyjoy. I think I'm like safe in one moment, and then I'm like,
and now you're dickless.
Turns against me, and I'm dickless. I'm left out dickless.
I will say this. Okay, I plugged the Yard to Gavin Newsom. On God.
I heard. Arguably, I think that it hurts our chances of him coming on.
It's good that you mentioned him coming on the pod publicly because he had to address it and be like, haha,
dude,
yeah.
I mentioned it twice, and I'm not gonna. I was like, F it, I'm gonna do it because then his team might actually look at it and give it a shot. And I wanted to be serious about it because at the end of the day, we only got like 2 questions, right? I want to get more out of this. We didn't
2 or 3 each.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you guys given guidance on the questions or anything? Like, what was the?
No.
They didn't say anything.
They said they wanted to talk about Trump tariffs most of all. That was their big thing.
Okay,
so we opened with that.
That was what we heard at first, but then when we got on a call, it sounded different. Then they were like, oh, well, actually, we can talk a little bit about Trump tariffs, but then we'd like for you guys to chat about what the Democrats can do better. So it was both. It sounds like they wanted to hit.
Well, that was our feedback. Like after they talked about tariffs first, then we sent the message and we're like, hey, we don't want to do it if it's only Trump bad. Even though he's bad, we got a lot of things to talk about. So then they responded on the call and they were like, hey, we can do whatever we want, but just mention Trump tariffs. I think it was good. I didn't feel constrained on what I could ask. I just felt like the time was so limiting. And
I was gonna say it was really short, but I also feel like
every question I wanted to be like, no, tell me about that policy. But then you can't. It's like
and they hit you with the everyone's bored talking about California.
He got dished a few softballs, if I may. I didn't.
Yeah. Dude, I'm gonna be honest. Me showing up late, I felt like I had less credibility to be like, anyway.
You did. You did. You showed up late. You left me hanging, bro. I was like,
I mean, it opened. I wasn't very familiar with the third guy, and I'm not. Look, I don't think it needs to be like a Gavin Newsom you interview.
Yeah.
No. Of course, I'm joking. Yes.
But the first 2 questions from the other guy were like,
Nah,
"Hey,
he is-
Gavin, love that you all the things that you did,
Yeah.
and how good they are. How do you feel about them? What are we fucking doing?"
I think that he's like the moderator or host across all the interviews, and he's like the guy that keeps it on message. I think he's the guy that's supposed to
Okay.
be like.
He's a very
Yeah,
like
he's
pro,
very strong.
very pro. Yeah, somebody said in chat a little earlier, he's like the younger, sluttier Aiden, which is why they wanted to swap him in.
Right.
Okay. So I'm slutting myself out for Gavin. That's
I
what I
think-
would do in the meeting.
That's why
Yeah,
we could.
okay,
That's
he's-
why we couldn't
I'm
invite you.
quoting chat. I'm
That's
quoting
why we
chat.
couldn't invite you, dude. It was you were too slutty for him.
Oh, right. He is extremely handsome. I don't know what you want me to say.
We got on the call, and I quote, he said, "I'm cool with anybody, just no bisexuals." And we're like, okay, that's fine. We'll swap out Aiden.
Somebody had to swap.
You're telling me this governor's biphobic?
Yeah, he's biphobic, dude. Big thing we learned today.
All right, I'm saving this. I
Yeah,
have
save
so
it for the
many more
box. We have a
questions. I'm
lot
saving
to
it for
say.
tomorrow.
Let's not
I'm saving
blow
it for
it
tomorrow.
out.
Sorry, guys. I just got to get back to my day job. Just got to get back to work. So
Yeah,
no,
the
it's
Mario
cool that
Kart's
you guys
calling,
are-
bro. The Mario Kart's calling. Make sure you. Bowser's Castle's not gonna erase itself.
No, just working, typing out my explanation of like the function of the national debt for tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Just try to explain the gold standard. Yeah.
He's like a gold standard. I'm excited. All right. See you guys tomorrow.
All right.
Peace. Fun
See you
interview.
guys.
Later, guys.
That was fun, boys. That was fun.